And they happen to correspond with what I'm about to show you. When Venus reaches its maximum height in the sky as a morning star in the southeastern sky, the light will go through that window and it will hit a niche on the inside, western inside part of the tower. Bill did not account for that niche. Conversely, on the west side, if the light of Venus, when it reaches its maximum, which is about 22.5 degrees, 22, 23, it'll hit a niche on the inside. This is a diagram showing those two niches and how the light of Venus would go through. Bill's looked at this work and he says there's some consistency there. It looks pretty good. There's something else that happens. And I want to give credit to Jim Egan, who last fall gave a talk at the Newport Tower Symposium. And he took photographs inside the tower and noticed that on the winter solstice, the sun hits this interesting keystone on the inside. And I'm just showing you the angle. After a solar alignment happens going through the south window, through the west window, this is Bill Penhallow's work, that light box keeps going as the sun rises. Now, as far as I know, I'm the first person to notice this. I don't know if there's anyone else. Let me know. I'll give them credit. But there are two very prominent, interesting keystones in the same archway in the tower. And they are clearly Masonic. And of course, the Templars might be connected to Freemasonry. I think so. This is called the Orphic Egg. And I want to thank some Freemason friends for helping steer me in the right direction. And you know what they told me? One guy in particular, Peter Tomlinson, he said, you know what, Scott? If you're worthy of knowing, you'll figure it out on your own. And I did. But I want to give him credit for steering me in the right direction. But I found it on my own. And this is what happens on that keystone, which is shaped like an egg, the Orphic egg in Freemasonry. Watch what happens to that light box. Holy cow, I just love that. I was pretty excited. What's going on here? Well, the sun is considered a male deity, right? And that round church is considered a womb by these goddess worshippers. And the Orphic egg is on the inside of the tower. It's in the womb of the great goddess. And what we have on the shortest, darkest day of the year, the allegorical union, once again, of male and female, I think. This is my interpretation. And I think what's happened is that egg is being fertilized. And now we have the progression to spring, right? And on the equinox, maybe we have the allegorical birth of what I think is the goddess ideology that the Templars and the Cistercians attempted to bring here around 1400. On the outside, there's another keystone in the same archway. They're back to back. And if you look at that shape of that keystone, that's another Masonic keystone. It's the Mark Master Mason shape. And back in medieval times, the Master Mason was given the honor of putting in the final keystone to tie in the structure. And it was, he carved a very special keystone that had the notches at the top. Now this is rough stone, but it's basically that same shape. I want you to notice that round red granite orb sitting directly on top of that keystone. Very symbolic. And you know what color the planet Venus is when it rises through the atmosphere? Red. So one day I was standing there looking at that keystone on the outside. And I'm telling you, I went like this. I said, "What's up with you? What are you pointing at?" Oh. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. You cannot make this up, because I went back and I did the calculations, and that angle, I'm not going to take you through it, is 17 degrees. If you start right in the center of that tower and you draw a line directly through both of those keystones, and by the way, they're not centered in the middle of the archway, and I guarantee you no self-respecting stonemason would do that. So what does that mean? It means it's off for a reason. It means something. Well, I got out a map and I started drawing lines again, and this is what happened. You can't make this one up. Now, that's pretty nuts, isn't it? Well, you remember that round orb? Maybe when it rises every night, when it's an evening star, they've got the beacon right there, and it's about that angle. I don't know if that's right. But I will say this. There are a bunch of stone holes in that little hexagonal pattern you see there. And basically what I think they did, these stone holes that we find all over the upper Midwest and at the farm, is I think the Keystones were pointing the way to that land claim stone, because you got to find it again, right? And once they got in the general area, they start finding the stone holes, and I'm sure they had a method to get them to the farm area, and then they were reeled in and they could find that stone. That's my thesis. I don't know if it's true, but I'm going with it. So we come all the way back to Minnesota. But I have one final question. Who could be involved in this? Well, I've looked back and talked to historians, and there's only one person that whose name keeps coming up that could possibly be associated with this stuff on the East Coast. And I'm serious. And I got to tell you, I didn't start off as an advocate for the Sinclair clan, but I don't have anybody else to work with. So there's this guy. Could it be him? Well, so I started looking at him. This guy reportedly sailed to the New World. Well, okay, that's interesting. Here's some facts. Hugh Depanion married Catherine St. Clair, member of the clan, in 1119. Hugh Depanion was one of the original 9 knights. He's a Templar. Well, there's a connection. Henry St. Clair of Rye became Cistercian abbot at Lawrence. Cistercian. 1146, and at Melrose. In the video, you saw me talking, I was standing at Melrose. There's a connection. The St. Clairs of Rosslyn reportedly were the hereditary Grand Masters of the Knights Templar Freemasons for centuries. Well, there's a connection. The Sinclairs intermarried with Scandinavian royalty for centuries. Could maybe they have gotten word through the Norse about the New World? Well, come on. Here's some more beer cans. We're throwing more beer cans. And Henry's grandson, William Sinclair, built Rosslyn Chapel in 1446. Well, what about Rosslyn? I got to go check it out. Maybe there's something there. And Niven, you and I have talked about this. The windows on the outside at Rosslyn have designs carved at the top of the windows. This engrailed X, of course the engrailing is part of the Sinclair family crest. And this is in an X symbol. And I kept looking at this. There are 4 of them. It's the most, there are 4 of them, and that's the most common symbol you see outside the window. And I believe it represents the same symbology as the hooked X. But wouldn't it be cool if we found, like, my hooked X? Of all the places in Europe, this is amazing. Niven, you were there. On that pillar, two pillars away from the apprentice pillar. I just can't believe this. That's the hooked X. Now, there is a little modification. You see that little lozenge at the bottom? I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but if you go down into the crypt, you take a right on the walls. I think it's leading on the left side as you lead into one of the crypts. There's an interesting drawing that's carved into the walls. And it looks very old to me, I'll tell you that. And Ashley Cowie's written a book on this. But there's lozenges here, and he says they correspond to latitude. And they do correspond to latitude. And I'm going to take you through it in a minute here if we have time for questions. But see these horns? Do you see those horns on the left side? He thinks those correspond to the horns of Venus. I think he's absolutely right. And if you look on the left side, you see a 5-pointed star. So I think that's a representation in the eastern sky. So that lozenge underneath my hooked X may be a symbol for latitude. I don't know what it means yet, but we just found this in April, right, Niven?